Hi guys, this is Mike. In this Cinema 4D tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use Bodypaint. We're going to go over a few of the basics. We're going to go over the brush tool, different brushes that we have. We're going to go over colors, swatches, and we're just going to paint out our first model just to kind of get you up and running. So if you open up the project file, you'll notice that I have a few different objects here within this null. Brows, lids, eyes, and the mushroom character, which we're going to be working on in Bodypaint. Now, Bodypaint, you can go to this layout here, and you'll be using Bodypaint UV Edit and Bodypaint 3D Paint pretty closely. And if you go to the UV Edit, you can see we have options and tools on the left side as well as the top. And if you click on the UV polygons, this icon here, you can see the UV map on your right side. And this has the map of that you can then start painting on. And if you go to I'll talk about UV Edit in another video, but if you go to the 3D Paint, this is the layout that we'll be using in order to paint our little mushroom character. Now, you'll notice it has the same similar tools on the left side. We also have a texture tab, which allows you to paint on your on this 2D view. Sometimes it's easier to paint in a 2D view as opposed to a 3D view, and we have its own menus at the top here as well. And so in order to jump in, this introduction to Bodypaint is really just to kind of just get you started being able to paint on a 3D object. Now, you will have to have a UV map on your character or your object, whatever you're painting on. And in order to start painting, you'll have to go through the 3D Paint wizard. In order to do that, you can go up to the top of your screen, right near these tools, and this icon right here, the Paint Setup Wizard. If you click on that, you'll have this dialog box, which you can start going through these options. Now, you'll have a mushroom object, mushroom null that you can twirl open, and you can see all the objects. Twirl open the mushroom sub D, and what we're going to do is we're going to uncheck browse because we're just going to deal with the mushroom body, and we'll uncheck these other options. We'll leave the mushroom checked. So let's click next, and here where it says recalculate UV, make sure this is unchecked since we already have UVs. If you don't have UVs, you can have this checked for your own objects. So we're going to leave that unchecked, and we'll keep everything default single material mode, and click next. I'm just going to worry about color in this tutorial, but you can also use all these different options, all these different channels, luminance, bump, alpha, but we're just going to keep this as color. And for the maximum and minimum, I'm going to keep this at 2048 and 2048. So we'll keep everything else the same, and we'll click finish. And you'll just get this dialog box, and it'll just tell you exactly what was created. And click close. And what you can do is I'll go through all these options for the color and painting all these tabs down here. But if you go to object, what you can see now is there's a material that is created. And we'll go to colors. And at this point, we can start painting on our object. You just want to make sure that 3D paint is checked, and that's this icon right here, right next to our setup wizard. So if you click on that, this point you can start painting on your object. So we're going to go to a brush tool right over here on your left hand side, and you'll see that we have our brush and preview. You can click and drag and it'll select these two tabs. So we'll have these two views here. And I have a brush set up on here already, but what you can do is you can let's see, you can go to different brushes right down here, and we're just going to choose this basic brush on the brushes tab. And we're going to choose a color. You can use that in this tab here, and you can choose any color that you want. I have this light green. I'm just going to keep that just for demonstration purposes. And I'll go through more of these options, just want to give you an overview. And then we have layers. And you always want to make sure when you're about to paint, you just want to make sure what layer you're on. We have our brushes, the various brushes that we can use. We have a different views here. You can view as list or you can view as icon. We have swatches, which you can load in. We have our materials. In this case, we're just going to use color, but we can also add in different channels. You can add in a texture channel here. And we have our objects. So let's go to our layer, and we're just going to use this background layer, and we'll go to our brushes here. So we have the option of using this circle shape. You can paint on this. You have also a rectangle shape. Let's go back to circle. You have different profiles. You can use round, linear, needle, nozzle, and user defined. You'll be using size quite often. Let's go back to round. So you can increase the size. You have pressure, which gives you a more fainter. Let's turn up the size a little bit. More fainter painting. We can turn that up. We can have the hardness, which you can see when you on the edges has sort of a harder edge. We can turn that all the way up. You can kind of see it's a really harsh edge. We have spacing, which allows you to space out if you want that type of effect. Let's bring this back. Squeeze, which will allow you to, it kind of squishes the brush to give you kind of more of an elongated kind of brush, if you want to use that kind of effect. Let's bring this, to see the rotation, you'll need the squeeze on. And you have airbrush. And you also have jitter. Let me come up to the top here. You can increase the count for the jitter, increase the size, bring this back a little bit, and you can see how it's going in one direction. You can also go in both axes, so you can do effects like these. You can increase the jitter count, which is pretty cool. And you can bring this down, and you can adjust this to give it a certain effect. Okay, so that's the brushes. You can also save brushes as well. So we can go into color, and you can use a color picker. This is helpful when you want to pick a color that you already painted, and you can pick that real quick. You can do that here as well. And you can adjust the different colors, and we have different RGB and this gradient here as well. Layers, you can add a layer. You can, believe, duplicate a layer set, excuse me. You can duplicate a layer, and you can delete a layer. And I showed you before, we have these different brushes that you can use, which are pretty cool. The different swatches and materials. A lot of times you'll be using materials for different channels that you want to use, say a bump. So you can paint in a bump channel. And I showed you before the objects. So let's do kind of paint this out a little bit. If you go to your, let's go to a color, and I'll choose one of these colors, maybe maybe we can go with a blue color. If you go to your this gradient color here, you can go to the paint bucket, and let's make sure we're on a layer. I'm just going to choose this layer here, and you can then let's see. Okay. I was on the wrong tool. If you go to this paint bucket, you can then fill in the entire object instead of having to paint over the entire thing with just your brush. You can just fill this whole material with color. And so let's go to make a new layer, and let's go to our brush tool, and let's choose a different color. Let's choose maybe something of a, well, we could go maybe a yellowish. And let's choose, let's go back to our original brush. Make sure jitter is off. And we can add in just some spots. Throughout the top here. And you could do this using the jitter, but this kind of gives me a little bit more control here. And what I'll do is I'll go back and forth between different sizes. Maybe that's a little bit too big. What I kind of like to do is make these bigger spots and then go in with some of the smaller ones, give it a little bit more detail. Now this is a pretty basic example, and I don't have a whole lot of seams in order to work with. But eventually you're going to be working on characters and different 3D models where you'll have lots of different seams. And a seam is where a UV map comes together where it's kind of split. It's not all one map. It's going to be, you're going to have different parts to it. So for example, there might be a seam that goes running right from the top. And the reason why you want to try to make sure that you have seams that aren't going to be too visible. Like you want to have them in the back, like around the back here, places where you're not really going to see them that well. And the reason why it's kind of hard to get around having seams is that and I'll talk about this in greater length in upcoming videos, but you're going to run into issues where, I'm going to go into a smaller brush now. You're going to run into issues where you're going to have some stretching and squishing if you use, let's bring down the pressure a little bit. And when you're having like these kind of squishing and places where, like say around certain areas around the face, you don't want to have your paintbrush kind of being smeared in a way or stretched, and it just gives you sort of an unpleasant look to your painting. So I'll discuss that in a little bit more. This is really just kind of get you up and running and start painting something, which is really the fun part. You know, you can just kind of put your headphones on, you know, listen to some music as you're just kind of painting out your little character or object, whatever you're trying to do. Okay, so, you know, I just wanted to kind of show you how to do that. So what we can also do is, if you go back to your layers palette, you also have the ability to bring down the opacity. You also have these different blend modes that you can use. That'll give you a different effect. Very similar to Photoshop. If you've ever used Photoshop or image editing, you're going to get some different effects, and sometimes you want to just experiment to see, even if you have a pretty good idea of what color that you want, sometimes you can put in a different kind of look to it and then just kind of back it off with your transparency, your opacity, and that will kind of dial it down a little bit. So I'm going to name this Spots just to kind of keep us organized here, and this will be bottom, and maybe I want to use a lighter blue. So maybe I want to pick up, maybe I want to pick up this color and then just back it off a little bit on this slider. And I want to go to this brush tool and let's bring up the size. Let's bring down the pressure. And let me bring up the size a little bit more. And I just want to make sure I'm the right thing here. So I'm just going to kind of give him a little bit of a gradient, a subtle gradient here at the bottom. And so, this isn't too, mind-blowing in terms of painting, but it should be able to give you an idea of what you can do and just kind of experiment and get you started, painting something. And there are other programs out there for 3D painting. You have Substance Painter, you have Mari by Foundry, but this is already within Cinema 4D. It's already part of a 3D package. So that's why I think there's some pretty good advantages here within Cinema 4D. And so maybe I want to bring up the pressure. Maybe kind of lighten this even more. Kind of bring this up down here. And you can see where what I was talking about with that seam. You can see where you have a little bit kind of coming up there a little bit. So it's just something to be conscious of when you're doing your UVs and you're laying them out. You just want to keep an eye out what you're doing. So anyway, I just wanted to show you what you can do with this, and hopefully, you can kind of just get started. And because sometimes it's just you just want to jump into something and you just want to start making something. And that's what I hope this video will help you out. I am going to be doing a lot more painting using Bodypaint and maybe Substance Painter, because it's just fun being able to make your models and then actually see it with a skin, with a color and some textures. I put a link in the description to download project files. You can also go to astronomic3d.com to download project files from this tutorial and all the tutorials that I've made so far. Thanks for watching.